Well, welcome, Deb. And look, I think we have to start with the obvious question. How did you sleep last night?
I had a pretty good sleep last night. Thank you, Cheryl, and that's really why I'm here to spread that message.
We talk a lot about sleep. I was just thinking about it. We say good night to people like as if they're about to go on some big adventure. Um, I pretty much every day I say to my kids and my husband, now, how did you sleep last night? Like it's sort of a check-in thing. Why is sleep such a big thing in our lives?
Look, there's a lot of talk about sleep in the media now, and we know that it's absolutely crucial for good health, not only good mental health, but good physical health. The problem is people get used to being bad sleepers and then they forget about making it a priority. And that's really why we need to have these talks so we make that change happen so people can live their best lives, because at the end of the day, that's what we want.
And I guess we do spend a lot of time sleeping. I mean, out of the day, it's probably the one thing that we spend the most time on.
We do spend a lot of,
Hopefully.
oh yes, hopefully. But often we spend a lot of time in bed, but we're not necessarily sleeping. And that's where the problem is. So people go to bed at the right time, they get up at the right time, but they're not necessarily sleeping when they should be, or they're totally configured the wrong times for their type. You've probably heard about early birds and night owls. So that's something that does affect your sleep as well.
And what's the ramifications of that? We're a network of women in business. I think, dare I say, sleep with women often is a battle. It can feel like a battle. What is the impact though of not getting regular good sleep in terms of productivity, in terms of your overall health?
Yeah, great question. First of all, there was a government submission put in back in 2019 that showed there was multi-billion-dollar loss to industry just related to sleep. So we know it has a detrimental effect on the economy. But, at a more personal level, it means that you don't have the concentration to be able to run your business. You don't have the ability to be able to eat well, to exercise, to communicate with your family, to get all those tasks that you need to get done when you're at your peak during the day, or when you should be at your peak during the day, happen because you're exhausted and you're fatigued. And often that rolls around to you trying to do that, late night catch up, which again is just going to throw your sleep out of whack. And, particularly if you're an early morning type, so you're an early bird, doing work at nighttime in the evening is absolutely going to be crucial for your sleep, because you're going to wake up early, irrespective of the time you go to bed. So you're going to miss a lot of sleep hours.
Some of the phrases that I think we often use is I'll catch up on my sleep. Is it possible to catch up on sleep?
Look, the studies do show that having that sleep in on the weekend can help. But effectively, if you want to be a good sleeper, you need to find your ideal sleep time. So you need to know that half an hour window that, excuse me, is best for your sleep. So that you're not doing things like doom scrolling, which means that you're on a phone and you're scrolling away because you're not sure when you really should go to sleep. And then you get that second wind and you miss your sleep cues. And then, it's 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning and then you're off to bed, and you're not going to catch up on your sleep doing that.
I have had not great sleep for a period of time, and I know that others who also other women in particular, 3 o'clock seems to be between 3 and 4 a.m. seems to be a bit of a danger zone in terms of waking up, not being able to go to sleep. And at times I've thought maybe I just need to get up and do something. Maybe my body doesn't want any more sleep. Should we try to force ourselves back to sleep?
Getting up actually is one of the worst things you can do for your sleep, because good sleep is all about getting exposure to daylight and also being able to control your body temperature. So from a scientific perspective, what we know about sleep is that If you're in a lot of bright light, then that's going to delay melatonin. And if you're in dim light, that's going to help melatonin. And if you wake up in the morning, if you wake up during the night and you get out of bed, you're using big muscles in your legs to walk around, you're activating your mind. Those big muscle changes produce minuscule temperature changes. And when your core body temperature goes up, that is a signal based on how our sleep works with our environment to stop melatonin and wake up. So
I'm really interested in that temperature thing. You know, I live in Queensland. It can get pretty hot during the night, and certainly over summer. Things like, you know, the fan on, air conditioning, sheets off, everything off. That temperature thing does make a huge difference. Do we need to pay more attention to that ideal temperature for sleep?
We absolutely do. Pre-cooling your room before you go to bed is absolutely essential if you're a person that likes to have the heating on or you're living in an environment that's quite warm. If you don't have access to aircon, at least have a fan going. Also, the clothes that you're wearing to bed, natural fabrics, natural fibers are going to be much better for you. I always recommend to couples to layer their bedclothes so that you've got a sheet and maybe a thinner doona, maybe a little warmer throw for these autumn changes. But also one of the things, if we sleep like the Swedish people, they have separate bed covers. So they'll have a separate doona each, a separate blanket each. And that means that when one person's feeling a bit warmer or a bit cooler, they don't wake up the other person with tossing and turning and pulling blankets on.
So no fighting over the doona.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Screen time, you mentioned that seems to be sort of the modern curse. You know, it was the TV in the bedroom, now it's the phone or the iPad that you know, they put these functions on like alarms and alarm clocks. So the temptation to have the phone there instead of an alarm clock and use that, but it also means it's just in reach, particularly if you do wake up in the night. How bad is it really?
Yeah, look, the thing about looking at your phone is what you're actually doing. So the behavior that you're doing on the phone. And we definitely know that if you're scrolling and looking at a lot of, quick videos, those things are too alerting for your mind. And that's going to affect your time it takes to fall asleep and potentially cause that disruption during the night. However, we have to put a caveat here. What we do know is we've been looking at screens for decades, maybe not in our hands, but certainly on TVs. And passive watching of a screen is generally considered to be okay by the sleep experts. One of the things that you do have to be alert about, and we've all done this, we've watched our favourite TV show, Netflix or whatever platform it is, and we've got to that cliffhanger at the end, and then we've gone on to the next episode and then another cliffhanger. That is a thing that we call being in flow. And what it means is that you ignore your sleep cues and you just keep going on with that activity. But by and large, if you're looking at a screen and it's a passive viewing, so you're watching a TV show or maybe you're listening to a documentary, it's not too mind alerting. A lot of people do actually feel sleepy with that behavior. And that's the ideal time then to, when you feel sleepy, turn it off, turn off the light and go to sleep.
I certainly noticed that as compared to, say, the doom scroll versus reading a book, even though I'm still using my eyes and my brain to read a book, I get through one or two chapters and I'm out to it. Why is that different?
Look, some people reading doesn't have that effect on them. It's all got to do with our sleep associations and what works best for us. It's very individualized. For me, I would never be scrolling in bed. I would just never do that. That, if that was something that you felt that you had to do, then bring it forward at least an hour before bedtime and then start setting yourself up for some really good sleep habits, like preparing your mind to calm down. You might like to have a warm drink. Certainly a lot of us have that association to making a drink before bedtime, and it really takes us back to our infancy when, you know, our mothers would give us a warm milk drink and send us off to sleep. One of the things that you do have to be careful of is that choice of drink. We certainly know that black tea and caffeine, any sugary high energy drinks, are all things that are not going to be conducive to being able to fall asleep easily. So sure, you know, pick up some herbal tea, try that. That could be just something that will really be good for helping you, you know, soothe you and send you off to sleep. Some people might choose to do a meditation or listen to some music. So it's about identifying what things work for you.
I'm curious about the teas. Is it the tea itself, or is it the habit or the mental association of having that hot drink? Is there a difference?
Well, it's that association really from infancy that we have that carries on with us, that we've formed that association of that being a nice, inviting thing to do, makes us feel safe, makes us feel comfortable. And that's why people do it. But again, you have to be really mindful of the choice of drink that you're drinking.
We have obviously also in our network a lot of women who are balancing work and family. And as much as we can pay attention to our own sleep habits, we also have to pay attention to the sleep habits of our children, partners, you know, whoever else is in the household, because often what's happening in their world, or, you know, children being up, waking in the middle of the night, obviously impacts the sleep for the adults and particularly for the mums. What impact, I mean, I remember it's been a long time since my kids needed my attention during the night, but there was a period when I think we all thought as parents, will we ever sleep again? What is the impact of that? Is it a case of our body, you know, gets past it and we recover and you know, resume a sleep pattern? Can we have those periodic disruptions to our sleep sort of regime and patterns and not have it affect us in the long term?
Well, that's really interesting because I work with all ages from infants right through to adults, and I've certainly treated women that have had sleep never return to being how it was before they had children. So definitely it's an ongoing chronic insomnia that can develop. Certainly, I see a lot of women, and many of them are business women that are out there really struggling with children that won't go to sleep unless the parent's nearby. And sometimes that looks like a parent sitting on the floor in the child's room. Often it looks like the child is in the parent's bed. And I'm not talking about little people here. I'm talking about children of primary age. So children 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years of age that are still needing a parent to help them go to sleep. And that impact it really does affect relationships. It causes a big discomfort, I suppose it'd be a good word, to everybody, because you need to spend a lot of time helping that child fall asleep. It's often not that you sit with a child and they're asleep in 10 minutes. It's often that you sit with a child and they're still awake an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3 hours later. And, you know, when you've gone through all of that and you're running a business and you've got a mile-long list of things to do, it's really distressing and it just produces anxiety for everybody.
One of the things that I think a lot of us don't do well is accept that it often will follow a bad night's sleep, so to speak, is we can't be 100% productive when our body hasn't had that time to refuel. And yet we still try to do all the things we would do in a, quote, normal working day. But our body just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, that's right. You have to try and catch up if you can. And a nap would be okay if you're feeling really exhausted. The thing about naps is you need to control the nap time. So set your clock 15 to 20 minutes or get a colleague or somebody to give you a bit of a wake up, because if you do nap too long, and that's totally understandable if you're feeling exhausted, that means that's going to impact your nighttime sleep. And how it does that is that we run by this thing called sleep pressure. And when we have a good sleep and wake up in the morning, our body won't let us go back to sleep. We need a period of time to pass over the day for sleep pressure to build up so that when it gets to time to go to sleep, we're feeling sleepy enough to do that easily. If you can't do that easily, and for many people, they're doing 100% all the right things. They're getting outside morning light, they're getting evening light, they've switched off their caffeine intake, they're not doom scrolling, they're really trying really hard. But the thing is, if you've got insomnia, you need professional help with that. And there's no point just going on and thinking, you know, it'll get better, because the turnaround to get it fixed is really fast. It's weeks to get it fixed. And, you know, if you're running a business and you're trying to be working at your best, it's impossible to do that when you feel exhausted and your mind isn't focused.
Yes, and then there is that hormonal issue that comes in for a lot of women where we hit that period of time, which a bit like, you know, when having young children and then at the other end going through menopause, or even perimenopause, where sleep becomes a really big deal in your life. I know a lot of our women are going through that now. Is there any good news in terms of how we can manage that?
Certainly, what the research shows is stress and anxiety contribute to the hot flush association and sweats. So generally what happens is that decrease in estrogen really mucks up our thermoregulation, which means that, you know, we can have those hot flushes at any time. They can be combined with sweats, and when they happen at night, it's really distressing. You know you're going through it. You feel stressed about being woken up. Often your partner's thinking, well, I feel like I'm sleeping inside of someone inside a washing machine, because you're going round and round, you know, all night. Certainly some of the things that can help is to be able to do some activities that help you feel less anxious. Now, that might be a mindfulness activity, getting out, getting your light exposure, taking a walk. Medication for some people does work well, hormonal treatment. There are some other things that you can do. Certainly cognitive behavioural therapy is amazing to help women get into that right zone of sleep hygiene and managing their sleep, particularly if they're doing that morning wake up and early morning wake up and can't get back to sleep. The thing that you do have to be careful of, I guess, is there's a lot of things out there that are promoted for this kind of problem, and often they're not you know, evidenced by a lot of research. So be mindful that what you're choosing has got a lot of research behind and science behind it, so that you know you're getting value for money.
Counting sheep, that old saying, counting sheep, never worked for me, but I have found, I read somewhere about getting your body into a point of certain relaxation and sort of associating that with a level, and then trying to count back from that when you feel your body becoming more and more relaxed, I guess, to try to just get you to that point where you fall asleep. Do those sorts of techniques work?
Well, they can work. Techniques could be as easy as thinking about a recipe that you might like to cook. It's about getting your mind away from, I've got to go to sleep, the hours are going. Certainly you shouldn't be watching a clock. But getting away from all that negative, repetitive thinking and thinking about things, maybe you might just think about a holiday you've just been on and it was delightful and pleasant, and it just helps you turn off from that repetitive negative thinking. One technique that we often use for people that are got lots of things on their mind, and as soon as they get into bed and they start thinking of those things, is to write down a list in, you know, at least 3 or 4 hours before bedtime. But don't just write the list, actually figure out a solution for those problems that come up. If it's related to, you know, some sort of financial problem in your business, think of some solutions that might help, so that when those things crop up at bedtime, that you can say to yourself, well, I've got a solution for that. I don't need to think about that now.
But don't do it in the middle of the night. Is that what you're saying? Don't do it when you wake up. Have done it before.
Absolutely. Anything like that needs to be done in at least, you know, 3 hours before bedtime. Some people find that if they wake up, they might do a breathing technique. There's so many things out there. And often it's a matter of testing, and not just testing once, but testing over and over. So repeated experiments with these things to see what works for you. And, if you do wake up, one of the things that can help is to, again, pick up that book, turn on some music, even putting on and watching a TV show that you're watching are all things that you can build a sleep association to. The key factor is that when you're doing that, once you start to feel sleepy, you switch off everything and you attempt to sleep. And if you find that, again, you're feeling like you're not falling asleep easily, repeat that behavior again until you get to a point where you switch off and you go to sleep. It's all about, I mean, these are cognitive techniques where you're helping your body or you're helping your brain learn that when I switch off the light, it means I go to sleep.
Technology, we're seeing a lot of products, from rings to all sorts of things that we can wear, attach to ourselves. What role does technology play in delivering a good night's sleep?
I think first of all, you have to not pay too much attention to it. I use it as well. I like to check up and see what's going on. The tech that I use shows me, like, when I've had light sleep and deep sleep. I don't pay any attention to that, because the best data that you're going to get to identify those sleep stages is going to be having a sleep study done where you've got, your brain is wired up and you actually have your brain patterns analysed. Sometimes, when you're not so intent on looking at those devices and thinking, oh my gosh, I've only had 7 hours sleep, that can give you more anxiety. So really the absolute best thing to go with is how you feel in the morning.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're refreshed, that you're able to get through your day, you've had a good sleep, irrespective of what your app has shown you, because sometimes they're not accurate at all, and that anxiety just feeds off and gives you more insomnia.
Yes, because there's times when we can have a long sleep and actually still wake up feeling not great.
Yeah, absolutely. And often that feeling of I just can't get going, the best thing to do for that is to get outside and get exposed to bright light, because that's called sleep inertia. And that bright light exposure means that it's going to tell your brain, okay, it's actually time to wake up. We don't want melatonin to hang around anymore. We want to get going. So
one of the things I think we saw during the COVID period was not only the TVs made it into the bedroom, but the computers were in the bedroom. How many Zoom calls did we see being done from the bedroom or the bed in the background? I'm wondering if that's still happening, that the office is actually being incorporated into the bedroom, and B, is it helpful in some ways to have that over there and be able to deal with it, or is it actually another version of interruption for sleep patterns?
the best sleepers make the bedroom for two things: for intimacy and for sleep. So they don't need to have any devices in their bedroom at all. And generally speaking, that's what we always aim for is best practice. Having said that, anything that you're going to do that's going to be alerting your brain is not going to be conducive to being able to fall asleep easily. And for an adult, you should be able to fall asleep within 30 minutes. And if you're taking more than 30 minutes, and that's happening times a week, that's one of the things that could be linking you to actually a diagnosis of insomnia.
Wow. Okay. So it's not just the inability to go to sleep, but how long it takes you to go to sleep. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And the same goes for waking up during the night. If you wake up during the night and you're able to fall back asleep within 30 minutes, generally it's considered not a problem. But, if that obviously keeps going on and you're waking up every hour, every 2 hours, and then you're waking up for longer than that, then that is going to impact you the next day. One thing that I probably should mention, Cheryl, is we've all heard about the blue light from screens. Certainly there's a lot of information on how bad this is for your sleep, and there's, a 1,000,001 companies that have got devices to block that out. But actually, in actual fact, the research is very, very clear on blue light. Blue light from screens will not affect the time it takes for you to fall asleep. And the reason why is because blue light from a screen, any light that comes from a screen isn't strong enough to influence your circadian timing. And that's why we use outside light, because that's what keeps our sleep on track. So any bright light that you're getting from your screen, sure, it may delay you feeling sleepy, but to actually be a cause of insomnia and pushing your sleep out of whack, there's no evidence to support that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And the other question I had, food and beverages, the impact of that, what's going on inside of our body and the impact on being able to fall and stay asleep.
Certainly, one of the things that could impact sleep is reflux, and it's often a condition that starts to affect women as they get a little bit older, men as well, of course. And certainly we know that eating too heavy a meal, too much of a spicy mix to your meal too late at night is something that can cause that reflux sensation, which is going to be worse when you're lying flat. Another thing that you should avoid is chocolate. The regular chocolate and also dark chocolate. Dark chocolate has caffeine, but regular chocolate also relaxes our smooth muscle of our gut. Bit of a tongue twister, that one. And that means that you're more likely to have that reflux happening, which of course is, quite uncomfortable and will usually wake you up because, you feel very, you may be experiencing pain and discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
Things to avoid, definitely alcohol. Alcohol is one of the worst things that you can do for your sleep. If you feel like you need to unwind with a glass of wine or whatever your preference is, try to do that at maybe a dinner time and make that your cutoff point. And test and measure. What usually happens when you have alcohol is, sure, it might make you feel sleepy, but it ruins the second half of your sleep. So anytime from midnight on is when you start to wake up more. It means that you don't get your REM sleep. And REM sleep is your dream sleep. Repetitive eye movement is what that stands for. And we need that sleep to be able to control our emotional well-being. So alcohol is definitely going to be one of the worst things you can do for your sleep.
All right, for all of those women in our network who maybe had a bad night's sleep last night or who are very keen to improve their sleep, what are the 3 top tips you can give them in terms of a better night's sleep?
You can't beat having a cool environment. It is so important. Getting exposure to more outside light, being inside and even in front of a window is never going to be as effective as being outside. Watching your caffeine intake, don't be drinking coffee all day because it has a cumulative effect. It takes 2 to 4 hours to reach a half-life. So it means you could actually be going to sleep on, quite a lot of caffeine in your body, and that's not going to be helpful for sleep either. And really, I think the take home is if you've got a sleep problem, do something about it. Sleep should be easy. You don't need to jump through 100 hoops to be able to get to sleep. It should be, you have a few things that give you that sleep association, that you feel relaxed, you feel calm, and you get into bed and you go to sleep.
Thanks, Deb. Amazing tips. Deb Herdman, a sleep expert. I think we can wish all of our WNA members sweet dreams for tonight, and hopefully they can take up some of those tips and put them into practice. Thanks so much for your time, Deb.
Thanks, Cheryl. It was great fun.